Alright, folks. Angry guy shouting into microphone. Hey, so why are we fighting a proxy war with Russia? Just why are we? All they really wanted to do was sell gas and oil and other things quite cheaply. U.S., as far as I can tell, still buying 6% oil. And Europe is completely dependent on Russia. So, we're about a year and a half in. Ukrainian counteroffensive. That is the blue symbols. No blue symbols. Why? Well, they've ran out of equipment and we can't send any more. Why? Well, just on real clear defense today, it is the 4th of July, happy Independence Day. America broke its war machine. Now you can read this, no paywall. Basically, profit, right? Basically, the defense industry is raking us over the coals and making lots of money, but not producing much stuff. They're talking about privatization. They're talking about during World War II, it was basically top-down government control was able to spin up production. And yeah, all the corporations combined, so there were hundreds, and now there were just a couple. We're seeing fraud, dishonesty, crooks, basically. Then after Cold War, this peace dividend. I gotta say that our country, it's not better than it was. I mean, we have more air conditioners, we have the internet, as though that's a great thing. I mean, I'm here, but social media and the rest is actually bad. You know, people don't really talk to each other, but yeah, basically, we stopped making things. 70-year history of consolidation, that's from about the 50s. Privatization, outsourcing, job cuts, federal inaction. Now, I'm not a huge hawk, but if I was, I don't know, I just feel like if you're going to have a big military, you should do it right. Larger profits. This is the main thing. If you know anything about public corporations and these big ones like Boeing and Northrop Grumman, they're all public. They have to, by law, do their best to have increasing profits, and they're also measured quarterly, so they need quarterly increasing profits. Now, that's just not sustainable. You can look at the history, and it's still ongoing, of GE, for example. They just get more and more creative with the accounting. The military-industrial complex isn't there yet, but it is. It's paying off the politicians to have us go into all sorts of foreign countries. That's a large part of what Ukraine is about, right? So we have countries like Poland and Hungary and Romania. They're like, hey guys, send them all your Soviet equipment. Don't worry, we'll give you replacement U.S. equipment. And then, you know, don't worry, Germany, send your Leopard 2s. Don't worry, France, send your whatever, your wheeled light tanks. Send your Storm Shadows. Send your scalp missiles. Don't worry, we'll replace them. That all goes to these lovely defense industries. What else can the U.S. military not do? Well, it's got a recruiting crisis. We can go in here. You know, the U.S. military, the Army, is only at about 57%. So, it's supposed to be at 750,000 active. It's about 430,000 active. So we would need to recruit about 300,000 people just to get back to a baseline. Now, Russia, casually recruited 300,000 people. Yeah, there were problems. Yeah, they had to send a lot of people back. You know, 2 weeks, you got to send half the people back. But guess what? Another week and a half, 2 weeks, they recruited their 300,000 people. They've been getting trained all this time, by the way. By the way, apparently they're continuing to get 1,300 some volunteer recruits a day. Now, could the United States fight a battle on the Mexican border? Sure, if we wanted to, if we felt like it was necessary. You know, if I mean, this is the conservative talking points, like you've got these gangs and drugs. Why don't we, you know, we have a Coast Guard. Why don't we have a border guard? Makes sense to me. Oh, boy. But if there was a war, if Mexico was shelling, I don't know my geography real well, if it was shelling across the Texas border, people would get really mad and they would volunteer, and we would get 300, 400, 500,000 people going to fight Mexico or Canada or whoever. Well, those are our only two choices. You got to understand that this is an existential crisis for Russia, and they're resource rich. And they don't have these profit-driven military-industrial complex. So what does that mean? Well, it means that we can't keep up with Russia, right? We like to tell ourselves that Russian economy is the size of Texas or Italy or something. It's not, okay? It's just not. Proof is in the pudding. So we're struggling. And here we're talking about, we still don't have a plan. We don't have a plan in Ukraine. What is our plan? Send more bullets? Anyway. China. China makes chips. By the way, Russia makes some chips. China makes a good amount of chips. Taiwan, which we recognize as part of China, makes the most chips. They can blockade Taiwan and keep us from getting our chips. That's a thing. Here they're talking about they are basically embargoing us for, what is it? Couple of high-tech metals. China says it wants more cooperation with Russia's military. Do you remember some years back where Joe Biden was making fun of, I think it was Putin, saying, well, why don't you go have an alliance with China? Guess what, guys? They basically have an alliance. Let's look at something else. This is all from today. Real Clear Defense, Real Clear World View. Typhoon is set to launch Tomahawk missiles, which is a naval missile from the ground. Now, this isn't fundamentally a bad thing, but I've seen so many articles where the U.S. is struggling to make hypersonic missiles. They're struggling to run tests. They're struggling with supply parts. They're struggling with carbon for hypersonic missiles. And so what you see is one of the few things that's being done is you're getting rockets fired from strikers, naval missiles fired from ground, trucks. I mean, again, this is fine, but this is just kind of like we've devolved. We're having trouble inventing right now. I mean, when was the last time you saw a scientist? I mean, I've got an IT degree in computer science. Does that make me a computer scientist? Well, no. I think it's like Doc Brown or whatever scientist from whatever movie that you watched as a kid, or, I don't know, Tony Stark or someone. There's no one like that in the U.S. So what are we doing? Well, we're repackaging. We're doing small diameter bombs on these old rockets. We're doing cruise missiles attached to Ukrainian, Russian, MiGs or whatever. We're doing this nonsense. This is the long-range hypersonic missile. So this is a hypersonic missile that we're supposed to have. Supposed to be coming out later this year. And I don't know, we've got like 300 missiles we're trying to make. I think it'll take us, if I looked right at the schedules, about 8 years to make those missiles, if we're on schedule, which we're not. Now, I don't know how fast these go. These probably go some speed. How many times has these been tested? This has been tested twice, with I believe a 2-year gap in between testing. So what do they do? Fire it off in the air and have it hit an approximate target? Is that testing? Is that good testing? Is this a proven weapon system that will work? Well, maybe. Mood of Alabama's talking about the sanctions. My apologies. China is sanctioning us on gallium and germanium, okay? And we need those for chips and such. Also radars. That's right. Those actively scanned arrays use these special metals. and we can't make them. Why can't we make them? Well, we don't mine anything. We don't make anything. We don't really have the know-how. And when I say we don't have, I mean we don't have lots of people that know how to do this. The few that do, they're already hired somewhere. They're already making their money. Simplicki's the Thinkers talking about some guy. Don't care. So I just want to talk briefly. So if you asked me 2 years ago, I would say that the Russians don't have as good military technology as we do. But I'd say it's probably good enough, and it's probably almost as good, and it's good enough, and they've got a lot of it. Well, I can't tell you how many weapon systems, quite a few, Russia has that we weren't even thinking about. So, for example, they've got something relatively simple, which is this agriculture system, which shoots missiles that shoot mines. Come on. It's a relatively simple system, but it's proven to be extremely effective. They've got something called the penicillin. Can we get an image? This thing, when I first heard what it did, I thought it was impossible. But what it does is it uses little pods. I think it's got about 6 of these, and it triangulates sound. And it's also got infrared. This is, I don't know if that's a different system or not. I think it might be the same system. What does this boom do? I don't know. But yeah, the idea that you could track drones and also mortar fire by sound, that just kind of blew my mind. And then I thought about it, and I'm like, yeah, that kind of makes sense. Now, this is a sophisticated technology. You can't just make one of these. Pollyanna. What is the Pollyanna? Well, this is a system that lets the Russian air defense systems, like their Buk and their M300, M400, and all that kind of stuff, talk to each other. When was this developed? Well, I'm seeing 77, but Smoothie X12 on YouTube, which I do trust, says 1971. So the Russians had net-centric air defense systems since 71, since the 70s. Apparently they have AI in their Lancer drones. This is another thing the US said, no, they don't have that. Well, yeah, they kind of do. And then I go to Google it, and you can't Google anything these days because there's a name for everything. All the words are taken. It's like, Jesus. So, supposedly, they have no idea how much it costs. Shut up. Still, for $35,000, it's pretty cheap for what it does. Yeah, so this thing can't be jammed. Can't be jammed because if you jam it, it just looks for its target anyway. And uses AI, which isn't real AI, but it uses this pattern recognition stuff to find valid targets, and it blows them up, and it's been extremely effective. By the way, U.S. doesn't talk about these. U.S. talks about what? Iranian-made drones, Shaheeds, or I think they're called Gerard or Geranium 2s when the Russians make them. How many drones has Iran provided? Maybe a couple hundred, maybe more. It's pretty clear that Russia is making them now, and they're setting up a factory and will definitely be making them in country pretty shortly. Let's just talk about this. I believe I've talked about this before, but talking about the Kinjal. So, hypersonic missile. What does it look like? Scramjet, sort of a stub nose. Kind of looks like something that would be used to split wood. Look at all these. Look with the flat nose and the slightly pointed nose, but the flat. Well, what does a Kinjal actually look like? Well, it looks like this. And so you have people in the West saying, well, it's not hypersonic because you can't have a rocket that does that, and it would burn up, and it's not. It goes into space, it's ballistic, and da-da-da-da-da. I don't think any of that's true. First off, it doesn't go to space. It's fired horizontally out of a plane. When does it go to space? It doesn't. Anyway, key point. Why do we have all of these crazy AI images instead of just a photograph? Well, some of this was before these Kinjal missiles were revealed. And so, you could kind of be forgiven, and, they had these mock ups. But why are the mock ups so different from the rocket? The rocket just looks like a rocket. Why are these so wrong? I think these were so wrong because the US doesn't know how to make a hypersonic missile. And so they have a different approach. They've got these ramjets, scoop jets, whatever they are. And, oh, they look all cool. Yeah, Ukraine did not on any of these. But, so when the US is hearing about something like a hypersonic missile, they say things like, well, no, it's only hypersonic for a phase, and it's got to be, it can't be at a certain speeds when it hits the ground, because then it wouldn't be able to target itself, and it can't go that fast, that low in the atmosphere, because it would burn up. But these are all engineering problems. If the Russians have a way to navigate this until perhaps the last, 100 miles, let's say, and if they have a way to deal with the heat, if they have better substances to absorb and distribute heat, and it's definitely possible to do. And so what am I saying? I'm saying that the Russians have leapfrogged us in military technology. Now, it's July 4th. Am I not a patriot? Well, I would say that I don't identify with these dumb neocons, these dumb globalists who want to send people to fight in random proxy wars. Like Syria. We're still in Syria. This is a proxy war with Russia. Do you hear about the proxy war with Russia in Syria? No, you do not. Do you hear about Congress approving the war in Syria? No, you do not. Do you hear Congress approving us blasting Yemen or inside of Pakistan or anything else? No, you do not. Our military is completely out of control. If we were fighting on our border, if we were doing something that was actually important to us, I would support it. I do not support this nonsense in Ukraine against a big country that just wants to sell cheap oil and gas and fertilizer and food and uranium and tin and a bunch of other stuff, mostly to Europe and also to the US.